Lowe's knows how to get you ready for holiday hosting with up to 35% off select home decor. And get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, members get free delivery, haul away, basic installation, parts, and a 2-year Lowe's protection plan when you spend $2,500 or more on select LG major appliances. Valid through 10/1. Member offer excludes Massachusetts, Maryland, Wisconsin, New Jersey, and Florida. Installed by independent contractors. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for more details.
You're listening to United Rugby Rewind. Hello and welcome to this week's United Rugby Rewind. I'm back in the hot seat. Big thank you to Hugh for last week. He did a cracking job of winding up some Leinster supporters. So, yeah, fantastic. Well done. Joining me, as always, are Alan and Ben. Good evening, gents.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Good to be here.
And see, when you say that, that's like because Caelan isn't basically, but Caelan will be along later. So Caelan's got a bit of work to do tonight to earn his crust and all of that kind of malarkey. So
we'll probably only be 10 minutes.
Let's try and stretch to 12.
Yeah, we'll rattle through it. No, so I've had a chat with Caelan earlier today that we're just going to kind of drop in at certain points, and then everybody can listen to because let's be fair, Irish boys like to talk, Irish boys like to listen. So yeah, fair play to them. Right. So how's your week been, gents? Did you miss me last week?
Yes, tremendously.
Yeah. No, you didn't, because I listened to you.
How do we be diplomatic about this?
Yeah, it was.
It's nice to have you back.
Yes.
But Hugh does lots of like pretty stuff on the screen and all of that malarkey, and
he also asks us random questions. And you got to be alert. It's like I said in the chat. It's like reading Afrikaans in school, and the teacher just says your name, and you're like and then you realize you've fallen asleep and you're 3 pages behind.
Good. Right. Okay. Let's crack on a pace then with reviewing last week's games. So there's reviewing last week's game. Let's just review all of last week's games rather than reviewing the game of the week, because yeah, we pretty much, and we'll discuss Premier Sports later, okay? But we've all dropped in and out of various games and watched 3/4 of this game and 3/4 of that game, and various things have gone wrong with Premier Sports. So we'll discuss that. We're going to park that to one side for now. We will discuss that later, but let's discuss games first. So let's discuss Sharks Glasgow as the first one, and tell us what you thought about that.
Okay, so I'm sure the Sharks will be relieved, that they won the game. All the Springboks were back, so that's something we're all happy to see. I don't think they were all aligned as well as they could have been, but it was a good win for them. The thing is, there was a lot of issues I just want to point out about the game that I don't think we were expecting. As far as Glasgow outscored the Sharks 4-3, they had more possession, they had more clean breaks, more defenders beaten, more offloads. The Sharks missed more tackles. The Sharks had to make more tackles. Tackle success was lower. So overall, while the Sharks did win the game, I think there was still work to be done. I think Glasgow getting a bonus point, 2 bonus points, has held them in a really good position. And they did definitely show champion credentials, I think, in that game. They were struggling at one point. I didn't think they were going to get any bonus points. And the last couple of minutes of the game, they really, really scored, played some awesome rugby, really nice to watch. And I think they showed really good temperament, and they really took their opportunities to come away. And I think they'll be really happy with 2 bonus points. The Sharks, like I said, they just have to align a little bit better still. I saw a statistic the other day that John Plumtree only has something like a 25 or something % win rate with the Sharks since he's taken over. So they need to work on that. There's a few people that have mentioned to me that a New Zealand coach probably doesn't work well with the South African players and structure and system. So we'll have to see how it goes from this point on. But overall, a good win for the Sharks, but it felt a little bit like a draw, and in some quarters a loss, because they really needed a bonus point. I think they would have been a lot happier if they'd come away with 5 points instead of the 4.
Well, the bit I don't understand about Glasgow, and Ben, you can help us out with this. So they had a penalty with like 4 minutes to go, yeah. And if they take the penalty and then they've got to kick off again, and then it's like, right, okay, then you're in with a shot of getting the losing bonus point. And they kick for the line out, score, kick off, score, and they've scored like 12 points in 4 minutes. What happened to the first 75? Do you know what I mean? Why couldn't they turn that on for the rest of the game?
I'm not sure. It was quite disjointed, that sort of, it was the middle third, really. The first 20 minutes they played quite well. George Horn went through and scored early doors, and I think, and then the sort of 10 minutes before halftime, the 20 minutes after halftime, don't think they scored any points off the top of my head. I think maybe 3 at best, but yeah, it was odd. It was really odd. They put out a pretty strong team. I mean, obviously a bit of rotation, but Tupolotto was back in. Cancellieri, who we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it's his first start yesterday back on the wing. He replaced Cordero, but Hugh Jones wasn't there. And I think when they miss Hugh Jones in that centre pairing, him and Tupolotto together, I think there's a certain guise and sort of maturity to their backline that might have been missing yesterday, because there was a couple of holes that got punched through their defence for the Sharks to score, particularly one just before half time where I think a Glasgow team if they were full strength wouldn't have conceded that. But yeah, I don't know. The last try, obviously, the Johnny Matthews try was probably the tries of the weekend. I think, if not the try of the weekend, it was outstanding. But it was interesting in that you're relying on quite a decent kick into territory to then play that try out, because Glasgow would have only ended up with 1 bonus point had it not been for that absolutely ridiculous piece of play. And that's probably a less than 10% success rate coming from that position to score a try. So it was risky, but it paid off. But I think, like Al says, I think Glasgow could be fairly happy with a 2-pointer and go to Cape Town next weekend. And I think that side will probably be stronger against the Stormers. I think the Stormers they should beat them next weekend. But I was interested about the Sharks because Al mentioned Plumtree as a Kiwi coach. There seems to be a bit of divergence between him and the squad, because he was pretty scathing of his team in pre-season in the pre-match comments. I don't know if you heard his press conference when he was on the pitch yesterday, Al, but he was almost like telling everyone, "Oh, I expect our team to lose today." Whether it was mind games or whether it's psychology or not, I don't know. But he's like, "Oh, we had rusty. It was really rusty on our Thursday, kind of run out, hit out, whatever." And you're right. That team was frightening. That was put out on paper. It was frightening. On the pitch, it was less so, because obviously there was a lot of rustiness, and Etzebeth wasn't at his strongest. Etzebeth maybe might get cited for an eye gouge. I'm not sure if that's going to go any further. It looked a little bit naughty. Don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Al. What you think about that? Whether it might be
with
worse.
these things, I normally wait to see what actually happens and if there's any proper footage and stuff like that. I would like to say that he definitely was trying to get around the park, and I don't think everyone, as far as defending and stuff. Obviously, he was just doing his Yemen Etzebeth thing, but I'm not sure everyone was on the same wavelength as him. And I do want to put a shout out to Fussy. I think had an awesome game. I think he was really, really good. But by the end of the game, they looked they looked tired. And I think Glasgow were pumped. Glasgow were really good. And on the kickoff to the last couple of minutes of the game, the same thing essentially could have happened to Munster, and they had their Crawley. He kicked the ball within 10 meters twice, so it just goes to show, like, that little bit of temperament. Really, the 2 bonus points. They will be thrilled, won't they? I'm sure there's more to come from the Sharks at home. So well done to the Sharks.
I think most teams go down to South Africa and think we'll come back with 4 points and we'll be happy with that, or. But 5, yeah, I think that's the minimum. I think most teams would be happy with, and I think Glasgow will probably get at least 4, because I think they'll beat the Stormers next weekend. But it'd be interesting to see their rotation, because obviously you take quite a large squad down there. But Tom Jordan was back in place of Adam Hastings yesterday. That's a good thing. I think Tom Jordan's more dynamic at 10 than Adam Hastings. Adam Hastings has that flair that I don't think will always work in South Africa. I think you need a bit more of a bully at 10, because it then gives the 12 and 10 that access that Glasgow have a bit more options to sort of punch holes, as opposed to
when you
cases and
look
stuff.
at the game on the players like merits and stuff like that, the Sharks fans will be happy and South African fans will be relatively happy, but those being out like scored and and having to make more tackles, it doesn't show like the dominance you would expect, except from a Glasgow fan, where you would say, you know what, we actually played like, you go to South Africa, you play that Sharks team, and you come away with the statistics that they have, and you look at the results in itself, and I mean that's an awesome result for them. I think it's really really good, and they played like champions, and they were solid, really good.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how the Sharks more than anyone progress through the season, because of all the sides that ended up down the bottom of the table last year, I think Sharks were the ones that everyone were a bit surprised with. And if they don't progress rapidly up the table, which we discussed in pre-season, someone's going. If they're not progressing really really quickly, someone's going. So let's stay in South Africa then, and just quickly touch on Stormers Munster. So Caelan did have a couple of bits to say about this, but what was your take on Stormers Munster? Oh, did you see much of it?
Well, me and Hugh discussed this last week, and we were saying you're looking at the team and you're wondering where's the creativity coming from. Damian Willemse had one of the best games I've seen him have at fly half. He started off a bit patchy. There was a knock on, but that was their first time playing at home for quite a long time. I think it was like 5 or 6 months. Their pack looked awesome. That number 8 man, the 8th man for them. He's replaced Diamani, the new guy. He's pretty good. I can't remember his name for the top of my head now. He had an amazing game, but Damian Willemse, man of the match, looked, star appeal. He's got a bit of an ego on him, and it just everything he touched, in the game, he was looking really, really good. And I think the result came out of surprised all of us. I don't think any of us picked the Stormers to win that game. So really happy with the result there. And I'm really happy with the bonus point, which I didn't think they were going to get it right at the end of the game like that. Really good. But Munster were probably tired. And I think Crawley probably didn't have his best game near the end, whether it was down to fatigue or, something along those lines. It's a tough one for Munster to take at the moment, because, they just have to keep grinding it out now, don't they? And see how they can go up the table.
I'm a little bit worried about Munster. They're not firing at the moment. I don't know what Caelan said earlier, but I think he might be feeling the same. But I think that's a game where I think they would have thought their team was strong enough to go beat the Stormers, because it's been pretty indifferent their start to the season. I think they've not had a comprehensive win apart from the game against the Ospreys. So yeah, I'm a little bit uncertain about what's going on there. I know they've got quite a few injuries, but the depth doesn't seem to be there at the moment, and I think they might be coming down the other side from how well they've played the last 2 seasons. I think there might be a less likelihood of them finishing top 4 now than
and I mean
what they predicted.
We all predicted them to be top 4. We didn't think that they were going to slip particularly far. And reality is, we've played 5 games. They've still won 2 of those games. They're still mid-table-ish, but for Munster, that's, if you compare it with, so I'm a Scarlet fan. Caelan's a Munster fan. Scarlets are one position ahead of Munster in the table. I'm over the moon. I'm delighted because we've won 2 games and we're looking good. Caelan's a bit miffed because they've only won 2 games and aren't looking good, and that's that's the difference between the 2 sides at the minute.
I think as well is, if you look at the table, we all know that the Stormers and the Sharks have got a game in hand, and they're both just located behind them. So it's not it's not unreasonable to suggest that Munster could be overtaken and end up in like 14th or 13th position once those game in hands, if the Sharks and the Stormers win over the next couple of weeks. And I know I think they played their game during the catch-up game during the Six Nations, but I mean, like you just said, it's going to be the people that they are keeping company with at the moment, they wouldn't be very happy with those teams, you know.
The Benetton
Company with the
Scarlets,
Scarlets.
the Benetton Scarlets draw does throw it up a bit, doesn't it? Because you don't, by the nature of rugby, the point scoring system, you don't get many draws, and to have a draw, it does kind of like change the kind of characteristics of the league at the moment. Because obviously we're a third of the way through the season next weekend, so things are starting to sort of show. Like Leinster are quite comfortable at the moment, and five wins, 5 bonus point wins. It's hard to surpass them.
I've decided then, rather than call it a draw, I'm going to call it half a win. So far, Scarlets have won 2.5 games, and that's how I'm going with it. It's not a draw. No point calling it a draw. It's half a win, and that's how I'm going to refer to it for the rest of the season. So let's have a little look at some of the Scottish sides. Well, the other Scottish side. So Ben, your game was Edinburgh Cardiff. Not a classic, but Edinburgh kind of knuckled down and did what they had to do.
Yeah, it was for want of a cliche, it was certainly a game of two halves. I think misfired in the first half, second half utterly dominant. I think it probably was a fight, a low scoring first half, and it deserved to be. And Cardiff probably were deserving leaders at half time. The try scored in the corner was pretty well worked. I think it was the only real good execution play in the 22 in the first half. I think Edinburgh might have got a rock up their backsides over half time because it came out all guns blazing. But I've kind of been a little bit scathing of Ali Price the last few weeks because I think he's been a bit slow, and I feel like he's again coming towards the end of not maybe the end of his career, but certainly I don't think he's going to be in the Scotland squad during the autumn test. I think the international kind of windows, probably international kind of competitions maybe beyond him now, but he was absolutely outstanding yesterday. There was two particular bits of play beyond his ruck speed and his box kicking where ball in behind quite early on in the first half, he's managed to outpace a winger to be able to get the ball down, but he then was able to have the nous about him to stay outside of his behind the try line, so he wasn't wasn't carried over, and then it'd be a 5 metre scrum. He managed to really get a good position, and he was able to get a ruck in behind him for the box kick cleared out by Ross Thompson. And then I think it was a really good breakthrough off an Edinburgh line-out, which again our line-out continues to misfire quite badly at the moment, considering the success we had from it last season. 70-metre run by, I think it was the open side flanker number 7 for Cardiff, and just went off on a run, and it looks like he's going to probably walk in, but Ali Price again just back in there and managed to get the tackle on, and then Edinburgh then able to retain possession from there. But to get another bonus point win. Sorry, go on.
No, I think that was the replacement hooker, Evan Daniel. That's
right. Okay,
that's why it was
16, number 16.
Yeah. So, sorry, carry on. I just wanted to point out that was a front row that made that 70.
Not that great. Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, no, I got that one wrong. Yeah, but Thomas Young's try in the first half. The other thing I was going to say about Thomas Young is that he did dab down for a second try, but I think got a bit of whitewash fever. I think it was one of those where his foot was well in front of the ball, so obviously was offside when he picked the ball up from the base of the ruck. Cardiff did have men on the outside, and they probably should have just left it for the scrum half to just fling it out, and then Cardiff go in there potentially 12-3, if not 14-3 up. And it was just before half time, and it was one of those where I think a little bit of maturity around the ruck could have been more beneficial to Cardiff, and the difference between 5-3 and 12-3 is quite significant, isn't it? At that point, you're widening the difference. Dead on half time, we had a lot of concerted pressure under the Cardiff line, like 2 minutes before half time, and then a silly knock on lost a lot of pressure there. And I thought we'd lose all momentum at that point. It seemed like we'd exerted a lot of pressure there, but second half was we just blew Cardiff away. I think Cardiff missed 38 tackles, I think, over the entire match. It's a lot. It seems really, really high. They didn't have any line breaks. We did, and we scored tries from different parts of the pitch this time. Van der Merwe was trying the corner, was outstanding. Managed to kind of hurdle and dab down just as his feet were going into touch. Pierre Schumann, usual off a line out, burrowed through. Darcy Graham again, really good break from Hamish Watson. Ali Price takes it from behind his back, sort of juggles a bit, but managed to kind of clasp it back within his shoulder blade and under his armpit, and then just ran through it again. Darcy Graham doing what he always does, just seems to be able to hurt. Like, just seems to be able to dodge people, whether it's ducking, weaving, burning them on the outside. He just has this knack of being able to score brilliant tries. And I remember when he first scored, I think he scored a couple of tries against against England. Maybe the 38 all game or the yeah, I think it was that game where he just has this ability just to duck inside, and he's very, very quick, and because he's such a low center of gravity, he's almost impossible to tackle. And it was good to see that. And then obviously the last try was a bit of a slightly overthrown line out from Cardiff. And it was odd to be throwing a line out like that when you've already lost. And what you should be doing is trying to prevent a team from gaining the bonus point. And they didn't. And it was one of those, probably should have just thrown it to the front and then just, you're not gonna be scoring any further points from there. And there's no benefit to scoring at that point. All you want to be doing is holding that team you're playing to 4 points instead of 5. And it was a line out that it wasn't even close to the jumper. It was a good half a foot above him. And then Ewan Ashburn just kind of peeled off the back and scored a very easy try and put a little bit of gloss on the game. But I think Edinburgh deserve winners, and it was good to see Ben Muncaster playing very well again. Obviously mentioned last week, he's had a torrid time with injuries over the last 2 seasons, but he seems to really want that number 7 jersey, and he's played well. Yeah.
Well, I for one, am really looking forward to hearing the Cardiff boys on the Cardiff Central podcast talk about this, because they started the season with so much positivity and so much, this is it, we're going places, and it hasn't really materialized. There's a lot of potential in that side, like a lot. Not just in Wales, we tend not to have too much depth, and it always trips us up. Cardiff have got depth, and it just isn't firing at the minute. So well worth a listen to Cardiff Central, which is usually out on Thursday morning. It's actually out on a Wednesday evening, but don't tell anyone, just because I put it out and then the boys can share it whenever. But it's usually out round about kind of midnight on Wednesday. So yeah, that's it wasn't one that got away from Cardiff. Edinburgh totally deserved to win that game. And Cardiff just continued to shoot themselves in the foot. I'm willing to bet if they aimed to shoot themselves in the foot, they would miss, just because that's the season they're having at the minute. So let's move on. Let's discuss the interesting game from this weekend. Anybody that watched this game, so the Zebra Lions game finished 10-9, but for me, it was like watching an old school game. Like
one for the purists. Love it.
Well, there was a rumor.
We are purists, aren't we? So that's why it suits us.
There's a rumor that when they did the coin toss at the start of the game and the Lions won the game, and they said, "Which way do you want to play?" and they said, "We'll play towards the shallow end." So it was horrendous. So what did you make of that game, Alan? Let's go with you. What did you make of that game?
When I saw I assumed it was going to be quite dry in Italy. I don't check weather reports like you guys do. So when it came, I was like, awesome. And I can tell you there's something about South African supporters. There's not many things we dislike more than the rain. Whenever we see rain, we are like, oh, it's hard work. And it was even wetter than I thought it was going to be. It was obviously slow. The ball was slipping all over the place. But the Lions' defense and discipline, I thought, was really, really good when they were under pressure. I think Zebra have a bit of work to do with their skills. They could definitely have the game was definitely there for them to win. But Frankie Horn, the captain of the Lions, is some player. And I think he's potentially going to make the Springbok squad at some point. He was amazing. But we've all watched games like this before from champion teams, and not that they are a champion team, they've still got work to do, but you win games where you're supposed to lose, and you show things that you haven't really had to put up with in the past. And this team specifically, I think I thought it was going to be a relatively easy win for the Lions, and it definitely wasn't. But overall, to win like that and to hold them to 9 points for that long, I was actually really happy with the win. I know it's messy. It's one for the purists, but I was, as a Lions fan myself, to go over there in the rain and perform like that. And obviously there's improvements that can be made, but when you've got your fan hat on and you're leading with your heart, these games are the ones that you remember. Do you know what I mean? It's you win by 50 points against Edinburgh. You start forgetting who scored the tries, and this game we will remember, and it'll be one. We remember that game against Italy. So really happy with the win, and thrilled that they were able to turn the South African mood around after that Bulls loss, because I can't think what it would have been like if we'd lost that game going into the weekend and watching the other team. So I'm really happy that the Lions won that game.
The other thing to mention now is that because obviously the way the season was structured, the first two seasons, sometimes the team you played away the following season. Is that the first time the Lions have played Zebre and Palmer, or is that?
I think they've played them there once before. I think they've played once before. I could be wrong on that. Someone might, if anyone's listening and want to make any corrections or point out any more man of the men, please, by all means. But I think we've played there before, and I think it was dry. So I think as far as like coming up to the north, normally the Italian games are the drier of the games, aren't they? They're football pitches, I think, most of the time. So, short grass and very good underfoot. So, yeah. But I think they've played there before. Although, like I said, I could be wrong. So correct me if I am.
I think it's impressive that they won in conditions like that, because I think the likelihood the Lions have played in conditions like that in the last two seasons is probably close to nil. So it's like, changing your entire game structure. I mean, that forecast, whether it was a couple of days out or a week before, you could plan for that, but it's still about executing on the day. And I thought the Lions were able to do it very, very well. And that it was epitomised by the way that they kind of repelled Zebre in the last 10, 15 minutes, because Zebre looked like they were going to score quite late on. And they really went through the phases. And then that was that really good held up maul. They managed to just force it into touch, and that was the end of the game. But I thought that was very impressive. Because Zebre they'll be disappointed with that, because I think they had chances, but again, like you say, it's lack of skills. They just don't seem to be able to execute.
And all the Lions fans take a photo of the table, because I think we're second at the moment. So there you go. That's a good launching point to go.
There's that points difference we gave you, Al, mate, a couple of weeks ago.
Well, thanks, Edinburgh.
The thing for me, watching that game as a neutral, you really couldn't take your eyes off it. It's the sort of game which, all right, it's not a high skill kind of game. Do you know what I mean? You're not cutting lines through the back and all of that, but every time someone kicked the ball, you're like, okay, something's going to happen, because how on earth are they catching that ball? And you kind of got to the feeling about halfway through the second half, and you thought, oh, mate, nobody's mentioned the weather for a while, and you can't really see it when you're down at pitch side. And then they showed a picture of the crowd, and you could see it absolutely still sheeting down. And you go,
and you did mention as well, Lee. You said in the chat, you said, "Oh, it looks like Quan Horn hates his life." You weren't wrong.
It's. But for me, I love that game just because you couldn't take your eyes off it. And fair play to both sides. I used to love playing in the rain. I really did. I don't know why. You come off the pitch and you feel like you played a proper game of rugby. Whereas you play in the middle of the summer and you come off the pitch and your lungs are about to burst. And you think, oh my God, what? This is ridiculous. I much prefer actually playing in the summer. I much prefer watching summer games, put it that way. But yeah, when I was playing, having that opportunity to dive in from 22 meters outwards, that's where you want to be.
I think what you said, Lee, about it's interesting watching those types of games is because the conditions limit the game as a spectacle. It really shows how good the rugby players are, because their options are narrow for the entire game. There's only one or two things you can really do with the ball at that point. So it just gives it that extra kind of interest to a spectator to go, how are you playing in conditions like that? Because like you say, a summer day, you're going to get those missed passes, you're going to get those kicks in behind. I mean, there was a kick in behind yesterday as ever, and it just bounced and then it just rolled off. There was nothing. It was just nothing. Because they were playing in 6 feet of water, and like you said, I've played in rain like that before, where your boots can't grip the ground. There's no way you rock in. You turn your boots upside down when you walk off, and 2 liters of water are falling out. So I know, we've all played in that kind of condition. But for professionals, it's interesting to see the handicap effect it has on them, and then how they make decisions of how they're going to play. And you saw a lot of short passes, through the backs. There was nothing. Zebre did kind of throw caution to the wind at the end, which I think they had to, and they were playing with a penalty advantage that last sort of 2 or 3 minutes. And that's probably the most expansive part of the game, is because they had, they were going to win and they had the advantage behind them. But before that, for 79, 78, 79 minutes. It was very attritional, very short ball, punching holes, just trying to kick and keep
I think at this point,
moving. And then obviously penalties. Yeah.
I think at this point, the Lions are known that they can attack. The question is always whether you can defend. And I think even though Zeba did miss a few opportunities to defend in those conditions, I mean, those forwards have to change angles and stuff really quickly in that weather. So they showed defense, which I was really happy to see.
And
the Lions try was sorry, Billy.
No, go on, you can't.
The Lions try was a little bit soft. I think that was the only kind of criticism Zebra could have. It was a soft shoulder. The winger kind of I felt like he kind of pulled out the tackle almost, and I was like, come on, like you're six. I think they were 6-3 up at that point, and I was thinking, you should really be, you should be clearing that winger, him into touch there. That's your job. Clear him into touch, not give him that soft shoulder where he's just going to fall off you and dab down for what looked like a fairly easy try in the end. But I think that was the only disappointment for Zebra was that.
Well, from a Zebra point of view, they can rightly feel that they probably should have had that game, and then you add that into the Cardiff game where they created more than enough chances to win. So it just adds into the narrative again that this is a really competitive league, and you cannot take any game for granted. If you take any game for granted, you may as well not bother turning up, because the other team aren't taking it for granted. You can bet your bottom dollar on that one. So the Irish games, the Connacht and Leinster, Ulster and Ospreys, we'll touch on them quickly, but Caelan does have a chat about them and the Munster one. Connacht, Leinster. It's not that people dislike Leinster.
Oh, I do.
I was trying to be tactful.
I love Archie Snyman.
The funniest part of him was when he was announced man of the match, and he would go up when the camera came down, and then he'd go up when the camera came down to try and meet him. It was quite funny, but yeah. Connacht will be disappointed. They didn't execute yesterday at all, and they got back into it and then conceded a try immediately from the kickoff. So yeah, disappointment for them.
Connacht are not a bad team, and Leinster are not touching top gear yet. That's the worrying bit is they're taking. I think they've taken 4 points from everything so far.
5? No, they're 25 from 25, and 98-point difference as well. It couldn't be better for them at the moment. And despite, I think they flattered to deceive at the moment in 2 or 3 of those games.
Yeah.
I think I think the interesting thing about Leinster was I noticed that Leinster had to make more tackles, and they missed 35 tackles, and they still managed to win like that. That's pretty impressive.
It was their execution of the 22. Their efficiency in the red zone is unbelievable. I think 5 tries, wasn't it? Yeah. And I'd say probably 5 tries off not many more entries.
40% possession as well.
No, Connacht knocked on a lot in there when they were attacking. I saw the sort of last 25 minutes of it yesterday, and just lack of handling skills. I think that's second. Bundyaki put in a good tackle that's caused a bit of controversy on social media. So just low enough, I think.
I think what makes that tackle look bad is the head goes as it.
The whiplash.
But it hit bump like this. But that's because the force that he hit his trunk with, and the head like a cartoon, where the body goes and then the head kind of follows 2 seconds later. But again, Connacht are not a bad side, and Leinster are not in top gear, but everybody is at that bit where somebody's going to give Leinster a bloody nose at some point. Somebody's going to catch them on an off day. Things are going to go their way, whatever, and everybody wants to be that side. So if you're a Leinster fan and you're listening and you're thinking, why is everyone always having a go at Leinster? It's not that people don't like Leinster. It genuinely isn't. It is when you're at the top, you're there to be shot at. And Leinster are a mile ahead of everybody else. But if you can take a Leinster scalp, then that's the sort of thing that lives with you for a while. So last week, a couple of Leinster fans got a little bit touchy, and
I thought Caelan was very objective, to be honest. I was a bit surprised the opera being kind of directed his way. I was a bit harsh.
Yeah,
You can direct it at me this week. I don't mind. I've definitely had worse things said to me.
Well, on social media last week, we have to change Caelan's name to That Caelan because everything started with That Caelan says and That Caelan needs to do. But when you're at the top of the tree, the only way down is down. So
I think Leinster realise they've got a point to prove this year because it's been three, and I'll say it out loud, 3 trophyless seasons, and that's probably the longest barren spell in modern rugby for them. I think I can't think of a more barren spell last 10, 15 years for them. But yeah, I think they've got a point to prove. And despite the heavy rotation yesterday, I know James Gibbs-Park still started. Andrew Port was on the bench. Sneijman obviously started and was absolutely outstanding yesterday. And it must be quite hard for Munster fans to see him go to Leinster and actually be able to play rugby after 2.5 years of being at Munster and playing 10, 15 games max. So it must be quite hard. And I'd be disappointed as a Munster fan if that had happened the way it has. But yeah, they went through some heavy rotation, but still managed to see off quite comfortably. But
so
they have to be shot at them.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't take it personally. We're just,
it's just a game.
Just a game. Just a bunch of guys running around in shorts. That's all it is. So the other Irish game that we spoke to Caelan about, which you'll hear from him in a minute, was Ulster Ospreys. And yet Ulster are starting to pull themselves together. Ospreys, frustratingly, for all the fluff and what have you last year, just don't seem to be able to pull it back to where they were last year. And there's all sorts of stuff going around about, is that due to Toby Booth saying he's leaving at the end of the season? Is there an internal battle? What I will correct, and I correct this with Caelan, is this whole thing about 40% of the squad are not available because of injuries. It's not what he said. 40% of the squad are not available because of injuries and being rested. You're going to rest your best players in this league, you're going to get dicked. It is as simple as that. You cannot do that. And if you're going to rest your best players, you can expect to lose. And I know, Welsh squads are working on very, very thin margins at the minute. And that bit I get, because Ospreys have got quite a few boys injured. But that's when you have to kind of rely on your main players. And they didn't.
Lee, have the Ospreys had an Interpro game yet?
Yeah, first game of the season was against Dragons.
And they lost that, didn't they?
They lost, yes.
Yeah, because I was reading earlier today that Ospreys had a 5-1 or 6-0 last season, didn't they, for their Shield, which obviously was half their wins, at least half their wins, if not more than half. So it's whether that's their kind of route into the 8 again, is to kind of play everyone against that in their Shield and try and get a 5-1. Well, obviously they can't get a 6-0, but a 5-1, and then try and pick up a few wins against Zebre or Benetton. But it was interesting.
They've got a lot of work to do, but they've got the squad there to do it. But like I said, everyone in Wales were working on thin margins. And it sounds weird, but you're almost hoping that your players don't get selected for national team, because they'll be gone for a month, and we have to play games in that period, and you're a bit like, I know everybody loses them, but when you've got the squad depths that we're working on in Wales, it's not that easy. So, but take nothing away from Ulster. Ulster did what they had to do. It was another step forward. It was an impressive performance. But Ospreys paid the price for the decisions that they made. So, but
Jacob Stockdale's having a bit of a renaissance, isn't it, Ulster? I think he's had a couple of quiet seasons after his sort of barnstorming antics in those two, the Grand Slam and winning Six Nations in 2018. I think he scored a try in every game, and first player to do it since Gregor Townsend in '99, I think. And obviously that was 5 nations opposed to 6, so it was obviously an extra game, which was pretty impressive. But yeah, it just seems to have found sort of a second wind, because he'd been quiet for a couple of seasons. Obviously, Rob Ballacoon was kind of the hope for Ulster on the wing, but Jacob Stockdale seems to have come back in there and has had a really good start to the season. So it'd be interesting if he gets picked up for the autumn internationals, because he's not been in the squad for a little while from memory. So yeah.
Well, Caelan's got quite a few bits to say about Stockdale, but we'll finish the Welsh side, and then we'll let Caelan have his bit while we all go and have a snooze and do the housework. Run the Hoover over.
Run a marathon. You'll still be going by the time we get back.
Repaint the lounge. So I'm going to leave Scarlet's Bulls to last, but I had Dragons Benetton down as a lot closer game than what it actually turned out to be in the end.
I think we all did.
Yeah, and it's a shame because Dragons have obviously worked really, really hard on key areas of the game. Set piece, defense, that's where the improvement has come. And you can see that they're a team that are together. They fight for each other, they work for each other, and they are not far off beating sides. The problem is that they're just that little bit off beating everyone at the minute. I'd say the only side they've beaten so far is the Ospreys, and that was a game that really showed their mettle, at the start of the season. And should have been a lot of positivity coming out of that game. But they can take a lot of positivity out, certainly out of the first half against Benetton. I thought the Dragons were superb. You got Tane Basham. If Tane Basham isn't in the Welsh squad, then Gatland needs to go because the guy is on fire. There are so many players in that squad. The Australian centre that's just come over. Name escapes me, but he had an absolute stormer of a game, and that's like the third or fourth decent game he's had all season. So Dragons are not far away. Benetton, again, another side at the start of the season that we all had top six-ish, that we all kind of put them at the top half of the table. We thought that they were probably going to kick on from where they finished off last year. It strengthened their squad. They look quite settled. They look quite comfortable. And they haven't had a good start to the season. But, have they turned it round against the Dragons? They beat them. Whether they've turned their season round or not, I don't know. But it was a good game to watch. It wasn't the spectacle I was expecting it to be. I thought Benetton would try and move that ball a lot more than what they did. And I thought Dragons would turn the ball over and run it back to them. Well, what I will say is I watched clips of the game, and then I watched it all the way through. I think for the first 5 minutes, the ball doesn't go dead. It is back four, and you're sitting there and you go like, have we been playing 5 minutes already? And we haven't actually stopped as the ref got his whistle, sort of thing. So,
very rare for that to happen, isn't it? For an open play to go for more than 3 or 4 minutes without a stoppage at some point.
Yeah,
because players only really practice up to about 5 minutes per play, because after that you see them blowing, don't you? Because they're too exhausted. Because you're always moving around. It's not like a game of football where, like possession game, nature game, you kind of can sort of be separate from what's actually happening. But with rugby, you're always moving, and I think 4 or 5 minutes of constant rucks and breakdowns and tackling it takes it out on any. Doesn't matter how physically fit you are. It's always going to be difficult to keep you standing. But
it may not have been the start of the game, but it was at the start of the game, sort of thing, and it was really good to see two sides who wanted to play the game. Do you know what I mean? They actually wanted to play the game. So yeah, full respect to both of them, because again, I enjoyed the game, and that's pretty much all you can ask for. Did you play and enjoy it? Yeah. So talking of games that I should have enjoyed, Scarlets v Bulls. So for those of you that don't know, like all of last year, all of the last 5 years, I've been doing a degree, an open university degree, which I passed, and I had my graduation ceremony on Friday, which is great. Loved it. Fantastic. And it finishes up at about 5 o'clock, 5:30. And I am 2.5 hours away from home. This is gonna be tight. And then the wife goes, "Let's go for a meal," because my two sons are away in university, and my daughter's with us, and anytime you can get your family together. Oh, love to. Let's find somewhere really close. Let's. Yeah, it's right.
We've got TVs in this place.
Oh, and then we sit down, and she goes, "Should we have a starter?" Oh yeah. Oh, Jesus Lord. So anyway, by the time we'd eating, dropped one of the boys at the train station, dropped the other one back at university on the way home, and all that kind of stuff. And so I'd said to my Scarlets boys, I said, right, in my car, I can plug my phone into my car and it reads out my text messages. Yeah, so I thought, right, okay. And as I was doing, I said, look, kickoffs in like 10, 15 minutes or whatever. Send me score updates. Nothing else. I don't want who's playing well because I'm hurtling down the M4. Just send me score updates. Yeah, no problems. Right. Well, that was a good kickoff. What did we? Oh, Jesus! From kickoff, really, seriously, there was like, I don't know, 150 messages, and 2 of them had the scoring. And I'm like, and I've got a little button on there that you can press to reply, but they were coming through so often that I couldn't like tap them to reply because the next one was coming through and the next one. Oh, and my wife was like going absolutely mental. She's going, "You focus on driving. I'm gonna unplug your phone." No, don't unplug the phone. Just. So anyway, I got in at 78 minutes, and yeah, so I watched the game back again today, and really, really impressed. There were so many bits of that game that, all right, it wasn't a classic game, but when you compare it to where we were last season, the amount of times we defended on our goal line, the amount of times where scramble defense actually worked. We didn't have a scramble defense last year. We weren't able to defend on a goal line. We weren't able to defend in close. Anytime anyone had a line out inside the 22 last year, you just go, well, how long until they score? We defended 4 Bulls lineouts, just on the 5 meter or just outside the 5 meter. That for me is a massive improvement.
It's a statement victory for you. I think it's a statement victory for you this season. Yeah. Being the finalists, at home, I think that's impressive.
Yeah, and it kind of, you can see the emotion on the players' faces at the end. The boys are coming off with like one eye and one arm and half a leg and all of this kind of stuff. They were absolutely in the wars and they put themselves through it against a really good Bulls side. That wasn't a weak Bulls side, So yeah, it was, to finish it like that with Tom Rogers, stepping into Tom Rogers has been dropped from the Wales camp. He's not even in the Wales squad really. So for him to make that statement, step into, handing a third one off, you're like, this is good. This is really enjoyable. Costello came on and made a difference. His confidence is starting to come back. He was hoofing the ball 65, 70 meters, and you're like, this is great. And the turning point in that game for me was on about 55 minutes. Bulls were pounding our line. They'd been down there 5 minutes, but they never looked like they were going to get through that line. We were, edging them back. And at one point, they were on the 5 meter line. We'd edged them back. They broke through back to the 5 meter line, pushing back. And then I think it was his centre came through and got held up. And turnover at scrum, 60 meters down the pitch, penalty, another 40 meters down the pitch. And you're like, okay, we're camped on their 22. We're camped on their goal line. So, yeah, that turnaround on 55 minutes. And after that, it was all Scarlets. There were a couple of bits where they came at us, but it was all Scarlets after that. And you could hear the crowd. And I think that's the thing that turned it for the Scarlets. Is it was like somebody turned the crowd up and it just felt like this meant something. So, yeah, really delighted for the boys. We'll talk a bit about referee decisions in a minute, but that for me was just watching that game. That's what rugby is about. If you wonder why people play rugby and they put themselves in a position where they could maim and injure themselves at any minute, and they do that every week, look at the faces of the players when they come off that pitch, and that's why they do it, because that's what it means to them. And it was absolutely.
What do you make of that rule change? 'Cause obviously, that had an impact. Because obviously, up to 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago, if you were held up, it was a 5 metre scrum in your favour. But now it's a goal line drop out to the defending team. That obviously had an impact on the Scarlets game on Friday because it's changed the momentum completely. If if Bulls are smashing your line for 5-6 minutes and then they're held up and then the ball, is back in, midfield, and then you're then able to defend because you've got your structure back again. What do you think about the rule change? Because it's a bit questionable. It's not as questionable as this 20-minute red card trial, which I think the French and the Irish have come out and said absolutely not. And I know they've secured some mitigation to it, and that if there's anything dangerous and serious foul play, the red card will stay a red card. There'll not be that option for the 20 minutes. But it's those little quirks. The rule change 50-22, I think, is a brilliant introduction. It's taken rugby league, but this held up on the goal line. It's a turnover. It's an interesting sort of rule change that has had an impact on, I guess, how teams defend their try line now, because they know they want almost to hold them up as opposed to because there's a benefit to it.
And I think the onus then is on the attacking side to not keep going for the pick and drive.
Yeah,
make it easy.
So I think I would like to see advantage to the attacking team. I think it was fine. The rule was fine the way it was, but from that specific game, I think the Bulls scored their last try. I think it was the 29th or the 30th minute.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
And from that point on, Scarlets, they seemed to want it more, and I think the Bulls got more and more erratic. And I think it was a game of composure. I think for the first time in a long time, the Scarlets looked very, very composed. And going back to the what you've mentioned about the holding up over the try line, it makes teams like Scarlets will defend harder, because now there's another way to defend. You can pull players over and you can make sure you're underneath. So it's changed the way they defend on the try lines, and it benefits teams like Scarlets and the Lions in that you might have a bigger pack, but you just have to get underneath them. But I think the Bulls' composure left them as the game went on. I think if the Bulls had scored another couple of tries, they probably would have won it, but it didn't happen. And
that's the second week in a row for them as well, isn't it? That they notched up tries early doors. I mean, they got away with it the week before, but Friday night.
Yeah, no, you can't. You got to finish them off, and that's a strong team. But like I said, Scarlet's composure. I'm not going to say that everything they did was perfect, because I still think at times some of the technique when it comes to things like tackling, that you're running a risk, which I think I think there is definitely that element as well. But Costello's an awesome player. I really like him. I'd like him to get into the Wales squad.
There's chat about him going back to Leicester, isn't there? I think because Pollard might be going to Japan.
But it was a really good
sorry to throw a bit of shade at you there. It was mentioned on TNT during the Leicester game today.
Yeah, I mean he's a Welsh product who then went away to university, joined the Leicester academy, finished university, and then came. I don't think he's a Scarlets product, but he came back to the Scarlets because we'd just lost. I think we just lost Priestland, or we were about to lose Priestland. It was around about that time, and it was like
Leicester got forward back, didn't they? I think when they had Ford and Pollard off the top of my head, is that right? I think.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Right?
But
yeah,
it was he's been there a while, and he's developed, and his pass for the Tom Rogers try, it is a split second thing, because he's about to get absolutely mullered by I think it's the second row that's gunning for him. So it's a fraction of a second that he's got to float a ball over the top to Tom Rogers on the wing. The confidence to do that at that point in the game, that was at 73 minutes, was just immense. So I think this is why he's so small, is because his bollocks must be weighing him down, because the man's got balls of steel to throw that ball at that time in the game.
It's being able to wait a half a second longer sometimes, isn't it, to really run that for that when you're right outside centre, to run that channel for you, because he passed too soon. It's the moment's gone, but it's passing in just as you go into contact. That's where fly halves. That's where they make their money, is that late as possible pass before they get absolutely crunched by a forward. Yeah, and I like seeing that, because it just they're the best tries, I think, the ones when they come off those late passes.
So it that kind of wraps up our games for last week, apart from Caelan. So without further ado, here's Caelan. So, by the miracle of digital interactive video thingamajigs, Kaelin is able to join us. So how are you, Kaelin?
I've been better. Look, it's Munster lost. My local club hurling team lost a final yesterday. It's raining outside. It's very windy outside. So look, I've been better. But chatting to yourself at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Lee, it's look, the only way is up, isn't that it?
Shh, no one knows. No one can tell that it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, mate. But so Kaelin can't join us for the full pod tonight because he's got to work.
I know.
Gosh,
It's
I
tough
know.
life.
Disgraceful behaviour, if you ask me. So let's talk rugby. Talk us through the Irish games. I know it's sensitive. If you want to talk through the Munster game, you can. If you need to compose yourself and get some tissues to wipe away the tears after, I'm fine with that. But what did you make of the Irish games this weekend, mate?
I'll start with Munster because I think it's the biggest game. It's obviously, if anyone has not skipped past this section, they want to hear me talk about Munster as opposed to Ulster Ospreys, which was a great game. We'll get onto that in a minute. But ultimately, I think the biggest indictment of Munster at the moment is one stat, and one stat in particular: 57% line-out success rate yesterday. And you cannot win professional rugby matches with a line-out that is that poor. It's predictable. The lifts are poor. The throws are poor. Everything is off. Everything's out of sync. And look, like Munster sit 11th in the table, 2 wins from their first 5 games. It's not a killer. I know one of them was Zebra, and that's a big disappointment. It's not a killer losing to Stormers, losing to Leinster, but it's the manner of losing. And if you have no set piece, sorry, I was gonna say if you know set piece, the scrum was relatively okay until the Stormers started to get a push on John Ryan on the tight head side, and Munster came under a bit of pressure there. But with a lineup that's that poor, like coughing up possession on a lineout on the 5 meter line, the Stormers, with cutouts and with overextended throws and back lifts that are failing, you're going to get nowhere. And I think that's the overarching theme from this one. Make no bounds about it. The Stormers, it's a good bounce back win for them. Their defense was phenomenal. Their defensive lineout was really good, as you'd imagine, but they didn't have to be very good to win. I know in the group chat you kind of talked about, did the scoreline reflect the game? I think there's a fair case to be made. It didn't. I think Munster probably deserves something out of this. But ultimately, when the game needed players to step up, it was Damien Phillips on one side, and for Munster, it was a bench that already looked light enough, and then had lost Alex Knight at the start, and they had to go 6-2 with Gavin Coombs, who rumored to have had a stomach bug during the week, being kind of expected to go on there and do something. And it's a poor result. Like Munster's first loss to the Stormers, but this one, it feels like the low point of the Graham Rowntree era, because ultimately, and I'm kind of writing about this at the moment and trying to get my thoughts together for a piece that'll probably be up by the time this goes live. But if you've got no line out, you can't scrummage your way downfield. That part of the game is gone. If you've got no line out, you can have the best maul in the world, but if you're only hitting it 50% of the time, how many mauls are you going to have? 3, 4, doesn't really make a difference. Phase play is going to suffer. Defensively, you're going to suffer because you're going to be on the back foot every once in a while, in transition a little bit more often than you'd like. Everything takes a hit. Confidence takes a hit. And it is a major factor. Like, they play the Sharks next week. We're going to that in a few minutes. And there's a worry. I think there's a worry now in Munster fans that if they can't steady the ship by the turn of the year, then the season might be written off. And ultimately written off, Munster could still make the playoffs. They're that good. Like, they have the talent, but they want to be competing. We all picked them in our top 4 for the season, our top 5 for the season, for a reason, because we thought they'd compete. But this is not what we like to see. There was a couple of Munster players that stood out, Alex Kendall and Tom Farrell again. But the Stormers didn't have to do a whole lot. Ben Jason Dixon was very good. David Phillips was very good. They didn't have to be brilliant. They just were good enough. They were finally the Stormers that we know they can be, which is an efficient team. They were ruthlessly efficient, and they fully deserved it.
So what's the difference between last season and the end of last season in particular and the start of this season? Because I don't recall that many players going. There's one or two injuries to key players, but you would have thought with the depth of squad that Munster has, you could probably cope with that. So what's the difference between the end of last season and the start of this?
I think in terms of output of players, I think the attack has probably suffered losing someone like Simon Zebo because he's just an unbelievable playmaker, unbelievable vision on the attacking side of the ball. But set piece wise, it's not really about who they've lost. It's more about who's injured. And that's Ollie Jaeger, who is crucial to everything Munster do because he is, he's powerful at breakdown time, something Munster don't really have. He is a brilliant lifter at line out time because he's built like a house. Like they just call a spade a spade. Like he's brilliant. And they've no Peter Mahoney in there. And look, there'll be Welsh listeners, Leinster listeners, whoever who mightn't rate Peter Mahoney, but he is one of the best line-out operators of his generation. And there was times last year where Munster might have a couple of off moments at line-out time, but he's making the scrappy ball into slightly cleaner ball, or he's winning a defensive line-out every once in a while. Like Munster's defensive line-out has gone backwards, and I think that points to coaching more than execution. Like Niall Scannell's a good thrower, but every part of the system seems to be going awry. And like, look, defensively, they've kind of tidied up their act the last 2 weeks. Yes, they conceded 34 points, but that was good Stormers. Like, okay, there was an intercept in there where Munster forced it, where again they had to go to 2-man on the line out, go straight to the front because they were so afraid they'd lose the ball if they went to the back. Made it a lot easier to defend. And they had one that was literally just an intercept where poor screen pass by Tyke Byrne, and he'll hold his hand up. If it was a poor screen pass by him, Mike Haley overruns the pass from Jack Crowley and they score. That's 14 points right there. So that's a factor. Like that, it was a 15-point game. Like I understand that that's absolutely a factor in it all, but I don't think it's about players lost. I think it's more that whatever tweaks they've made compiled together just has not worked. They took a shorter preseason. Graham Rowntree was effusive before the season that was not going to be a reason that they'd start slow. He did not believe that, but I think it is part of it. I think they've taken the eye off the ball in a couple of places. Like attack, and I think I said it here last week, if not, I said it in the Red Army podcast. I think attack, the big issue is just individual battles. Win your collisions in midfield. If your second rows or your tight five essentially are not winning their run out carries and they're just going screen pass to screen pass, you're not going anywhere. You're not forcing compressions. You're not making the defense sit down. And ultimately that has a knock-on effect on Munster's attack. If you're constantly going screen, it's very easy to defend. I think Munster did well on the attacking side of the ball for maybe the first hour. I think after that, they did start to tire. They went 6-2 and Shane Daly had to come off after 50 minutes. So there was a couple of tired bodies around. That'll happen. But ultimately, there's a couple of tweaks that have been made that just don't seem to be working. And some of it is on coaching. I think line out is on coaching. I think defensive system, a couple of things like in and around the edges, the 5 meter edges either side of the ruck, that's probably coaching. I think the rest is players, missing your 1-up tackles, missing your scrambles, maybe not winning your collisions. Some of that's on the players, and that ultimately is not good enough because you've got World Cup winners, you've got some of the best players in the world, you've got, at the end of the day, props are very important in midfield in rugby now. And your front row is very important in midfield in rugby in this day and age, same with your back row. They're more than just breakdown operators. So there's a lot of different parts. They've got the Sharks next, and that is a scary prospect. It was a scary prospect as is, but it's one that you kind of hope to just get out of there with something now at this stage.
When people say, and we're playing the Sharks, you kind of wish that you were playing them 2 weeks ago now, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Or even if South Africa were playing a week after that game and they mightn't have a couple of players, like it makes a massive difference. We've seen it yesterday with the Glasgow game.
Yeah, it's when you look at who the Sharks brought in and you go, well, that's basically a side that you put up people around. Do you know what I mean? There's enough players there. If you just put those players on a pitch and then put a bunch of under sevens in places where those boys would still run out and win. So yeah, Let's talk other Irish games, because I can see the pain building in your eyes, mate. So let's
No, that's just tiredness. It's fine.
let's talk Ulster and Ospreys, and
Yeah.
let's go through that one.
Look, the Ospreys, they had a lot of injuries, and I will start with that as a massive bone of context. The Ospreys are bottom of the table now. They are not the team they were at the end of last season, with context included. But Ulster were very good. Ulster were really, really good in this game. It's starting to come together. I mentioned it before on here that when they get Sheridan and his two crew and Wilson and guys like that back into the team, even Tom O'Toole starting, that they'd be a much stronger prospect. Cormac Izuchukwu was excellent on the night, for instance. I thought, I think you can write this down. I think Jacob Stockdale is the form winger in Ireland right now. Everything he does just seems to be working. Every touch, every kick, every tackle, really impressed with him. He has never scored a career hat trick. He was very close, but he had to try disallowed, rightfully disallowed, because it was a forward pass. But then if a prop is throwing a one-handed offload in midfield and it drifts forward, at what stage do you just bring out a green card and say the rule of cool applies, and you just have to award it? Because Eric O'Sullivan threw an audacious pass. Yes, it went forward, and it's not really about Stockdale, it's about Eric O'Sullivan having this moment that was so good, but unfortunately try gets chalked off. It didn't make a difference in the end because Ulster ran out convincing winners. The Ospreys, they scored 2 tries, was one, if not 2 of them were from all tries. I won't lie, I kind of had it switched off near the end for other sporting events that were on as well. We could put it that way. And look, I'm really impressed with Ulster. And I said it, like, I was one of the highest people on Ulster on this pod. I said, give them time. I thought there was something there. I thought they were starting to put together something at the end of last season in terms of, in most facets of the game. They've got a good lineup. Granted, they don't have their 2 starting hookers, or they don't have Ian Henderson in the squad that played the last day. They've got a good lineup. Their scrum is pretty solid with O'Toole and Wilson, although the loosehead side's a little bit weaker. Their array of carrying in the back row, excellent. This was an Ulster team without Nick Timoney, and he has been their talisman for the last couple of years. They've got, brilliant workers at breakdown time, brilliant disruptors in McCann, Izuchukwu, in Sheridan. I know John Cooney had an off night with the boot, but typically they're very good goal kickers. Aidan Morgan seems to bring a flash. They're a better team when Stuart McCluskey's in there, because Stuart McCluskey is one of the most underrated players in Ireland. He just has everything about him. Werner Koch was excellent again. And for a bit of a blast for the past for our older listeners, we had Nathan Doak, son of Neil Doak, and James Humphreys, son of David Humphreys, both on the bench for Ulster. And James Humphreys, if you haven't seen it, that pass before Jacob Stockdale's second try is an absolute beauty. There's a Russian defender in his face, zips it away to Mike Lowry. It's on the money. Lowry throws a skip pass. Stockdale eventually finishes with a lot of work to do, in fairness to him. But this is the Ulster that we're starting to see a little bit more of, and the Ulster that I was pretty excited about before the season began. And I look at their next couple of games now. They're away to Cardiff next week. I think they should have enough there if they click. They've got Leinster at home on the same day Ireland play. Then you're into kind of interval season and all that kind of jazz. And apologies now, my screen is just frozen as I tried to get it up. They're into interpros with Munster and Connacht. But then they got Zebra, Benetton, Scarlets, Dragons, Stormers at home in that kind of third quarter of the season. I would not be surprised if we see Ulster top 4 at that point, because they are building something. They're not going to lose a huge pile of players to Ireland duty. They'll lose a few, but not a huge amount. They'll get guys back. They're going in the right direction. It's a pity for the Ospreys. Like, they were flogged. There's a lot of names there in that squad that I would not know, and I only covered them there 2 weeks ago. And it's a pity for them because all the momentum of last season seems to be gone. But credit where credit is due. Ulster were absolutely excellent on the night. And you can only beat what's in front of you. I know it's a real cliche, but you can only beat what's in front of you. And Ulster did. Put them away with ease. On to Cardiff next. And I say they could be top 4 by that stage. They could be top 4 next weekend. And considering the hammering they got off the Bulls, and I know you'll have talked about the Bulls in the pod without me, but that's some turnaround, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Ulster are in 5th behind Bulls, Glasgow, Lions, Leinster. So yeah, 15 points. So on the level with the Bulls, and yeah, more than capable of overtaking the Lions and Glasgow with a result going either way. We'll come on and talk about Leinster in a minute, but Leinster are top with 100% of everything and all of that kind of malarkey. Somebody's going to give Leinster a bloody nose at some point. But I was one of those people that said Ulster would probably end up at the bottom half of the table. I just felt that there was too much going on and too much to kind of pull together. But full respect to them, they've where it counts with it. I think they've focused on the key bits, and you can get this bit right and this bit right and this your set pieces and rucks in particular. Defensively around the ruck, they're very difficult to get anything out of. There isn't a lot of distance beyond that first tackle if you're playing against Ulster. So I think it's they're difficult to play against, they're difficult to beat, and if you start with that, then winning games kind of you'll win enough games if you're difficult to beat. So looking at Ospreys, I mean, yeah, Toby Booth, the bit where you said about injuries, okay, and a lot of Ospreys fans are going to hate me on this, but this is the truth, okay. What that statement says is they've got 40% of their squad not available through injuries and we're resting a couple. And they didn't really focus on the players that they're resting. Yeah. And if you're going to rest players, then you need to rest them for a reason, because, if you're going away to play Ulster and you're not taking your strongest side, then you're going to get tanked. And we've spoken a lot so far in this, in the URC, that how competitive this is. A Zebra nearly gave the Lions a turnover. Zebra should have turned over Cardiff at the start of the season. The Scarlets turned over the Bulls. It's where you are in the table almost has no relevance on whether you're going to win or lose. And I think Munster are probably finding that out as well, that it's not so much that they've come down a massive amount, but everybody else is coming up. Leinster aside, I think there's almost Leinster and then everyone else. And you look at the bottom of the table at the minute, you've got Ospreys, Zebra, Dragons, Sharks. Well, none of those four are weak sides. They're not down the bottom because they're a pile of pants. They're down the bottom because they've come up against a couple of teams that it could have gone either way. So yeah, it was a good win for Ulster, and yeah, I think the Ospreys. I can't see Ospreys continuing like this the rest of the season. I think their pack is too strong. I do expect them to lose quite a few players to the Wales squad, and WIU have promised us that the structure that is now in place will support sides who, if you lose a lot of players, the transfer in between sides, effectively the WIU will force people to go and play for other sides. So if I've got 4 fit scrum halves and you've got 1 fit scrum half, then I have to give at least 1 to you. That's the theory. We will see if that plays out for it did last year. I'll be fair, it did last year. And there are still quite a few boys in the SRC who are ex-pros who dropped down to semi-pro and could quite comfortably step back up. So that may come and save the Ospreys at some point as well. So who else have we got left to talk about? Do you want to finish talking about Irish rugby there, or do you want to do?
I'll do a small bit. My game of the week next week is Leinster Lions, the 2 unbeaten teams in the league. Yeah, the 2 unbeaten teams left in the league. So I'll do a bit on that, but I'll just start on Leinster's win at the weekend. Like, emphatic. I didn't see this. I just kind of skimmed through the highlights and asked people who I would rely upon for their rugby opinions as to what they thought. And I might contradict what Ben might say. I'm not saying Ben isn't one of them. I'm just throwing it out there. But look, for Leinster, 33-12 win in Galway. Like I said, Leinster by 10. They won by 21. Am I surprised? No. because I seen that Leinster midfield that was named, and it had obviously Snyman and Ryan. They had Culhane at 8, but they had Deegan on the field as well. Gibson Park, Frawley, Osborne, Ringrose, and Keenan. Like, Leinster, for me, Leinster were never going to lose this game. And my point and my theory still stands as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure about Leinster's second layer, even though the likes of Andrew Osborne played well, Gus McCarthy played well. They're still good players. But ultimately, do Leinster win this game without Gibson Park, without Ringrose, without Jamie Osborne, without whoever? Probably not. Yes, Connacht weren't at their best, but do Leinster win without those guys? Probably not. Like, Orcus Neyman has go gadget arms. That's nothing new. This is not something that he just happened to have when he joined Leinster, which, if you read what's in the Irish papers this morning, you might think that. No, it's not the case. He was like that at Munster. His off-roading game was crucial for Munster at times, and ultimately was their downfall last season because he tried an offload that wasn't on against Glasgow, which ultimately lost them the game. But he's talented. I think this is the thing about Leinster. I think Leinster's season is going to be defined by how many games they can get Gibson Park, Ringrose, James Lowe, Doris, Snyman, Joe McCarthy, Porter, and Furlong on the field for. I think that's what it boils down to for me. If they can get through the season and win, they're 5-5 now. If they can win 15 games, we'll probably see them top at this stage because nearly everyone has lost 2 games, bar themselves and the Lions. So if they're in with a really good chance of finishing top again, get all their big names back and make a run for this year. The pressure is on them. Like, let's not get it wrong that the pressure is on. They have underperformed in the URC, but it's there for them. I think next weekend is really, really fascinating because, like Wales, the Ireland squad is going to be named this week. It's going to have a lot of Leinster players. I think we'll see a couple of new Leinster faces named in the Ireland squad. The likes of, I think Gus McCarthy will be named. I think Sam Prendergast will be in there. Not a new face, but he'd be uncapped. We might see someone like James Culhane or Max Deegan getting in because Ireland have injuries. In the pack, we might even see another outside back. I don't know if Leinster have many fit, to be honest. Is the other side of it. So there's all that. But they're playing the Lions, who were thoroughly unconvincing yesterday. It was horrible conditions that the Lions should not be playing in because it does not suit their brand. But they're going to go to the Aviva Stadium, and I think they're going to fancy a crack off Leinster because they know if they can open Leinster up, like, they're going up against an Nienaber defence. Okay, fair enough. But half South Africa plays a bliss defence. They are going to fancy their chances. They've got more speed. They'll have more power in certain parts of the field. I think at back row and front row, I think it's unlikely we see Furlong and Porter start this one, maybe one of them. So they'll probably have more power there. Leinster's midfield, I would trust them, in fairness. They'll have more pace out wide. They're going to really try and run at Leinster, really give it a rattle. The only thing is, the Leinster that we've seen the last couple of weeks, I think they have gotten incrementally better week on week. Against Edinburgh, they probably lose if Gibson Park doesn't have a masterclass because he was excellent that night. Against the Dragons, they weren't great. They were kind of fortunate at times. Fast forward to Benetton, job done in 20 minutes. Fast forward to Munster, job done in 20 minutes. This game, probably their most complete performance, their most rounded performance. But the Lions are high in confidence. Like, we've never seen the Lions go on a run like this, to my memory. Not in as impressive fashion as they have either, is another side of it. So I think this one's going to be really interesting. I will back Leinster, and as I said, either last week or the week before, if I've gamed the week Leinster, I'm just going to back Leinster because it's going to be more often than not the correct call. It's the same for Super Brew. Just back Leinster. They're kind of like, Man City or someone like that. Like, you're going to be right more than you get it wrong if you kind of go against it. So I'm going to back Leinster, but I think that one's really fascinating. It's Leinster's kind of strangle approach versus the Lions. Let's throw it around. Let's go for this. Let's, play off the cuff rugby, and they have the power. They have the set piece. They have a remarkably better scrum than Leinster do. So that one's one to look out for. Leinster will have a young hooker in there, probably Gus McCarthy starting. Very unlikely we see Stephen Smith start, who got his debut at the weekend. So probably Gus McCarthy. They'll probably go after him at line-out time as well. The Lions will have no reason to fear Leinster, apart from the fact that it is Leinster, and it is Dublin, and that is absolutely a factor. But that is definitely one to watch out for. I don't know if I'll be able to see it myself, on Saturday, but I would look forward to that for anyone who's in Dublin. I think it would be even worth going to. I think that should be a lot of fun.
Well, if anyone hasn't seen the Zebra Lions game, there's a clip in it that's just kind of off camera where you see somebody, you don't see the rest of the player that you're focusing on, either a scrum or a ruck or something. You can see a player standing just off, but you can see the water level on the boots. Do you know what I mean? That's 1980s, 90. That's pre-pro rugby. Do you know what I mean? That's proper old school rugby where you know when you dive in for a try and it's just
No.
like everywhere and all.
I did not score enough tries to know that.
It is properly one of those games, and I got to be fair to both sides that they did try to throw the ball around where it was good, but you just thought, let's just stick it in the air because someone's going to drop it, because it's a nightmare. But yeah, Leinster Lions next week is, I think that's the game that everyone wants to see now. And I think this is the interesting bit with the URC. Last year, Lions kind of underperformed quite a bit. Sorry, Alan, but they did, and to see them now come back, you always kind of felt the Lions were like the fourth team. Do you know what I mean? They were, and then the Sharks were awful last year, but the Lions didn't really set the world alight. This year, you're kind of like, well, why haven't they been doing that for the last 3 or 4 seasons? Because surely that's what they do. So I'm really looking forward to it. Really, really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a cracking game. So we'll do all the rest of it in a minute, but let's just have your prediction then for Leinster Lions. I know it's a Leinster win, but by how many?
I don't think it's going to be a lot. I think Leinster win by maybe 10. Now, again, it goes back to what Lions show up. If we see the Lions that we've seen all season, bar maybe Parma, I think it's going to be really, really tight and it's going to be really interesting. But it's hard to say Leinster won't win by enough. Like Leinster typically get out in front and have that comfort. There is that massive asterisk, as I said, the Ireland squad will be named. Will Leinster be without any players in particular who are essentially level raisers, who bring up the level of the entire team? Will Doris, will Gibson Park, will Furlong or Porter, will James Ryan, will we haven't seen a lot of Ryan Baird. Will he be involved, for instance? Will we see Ringrose start again? Henshaw might be back, in fairness. That's massive. And if Leinster have any ways of a weaker squad than what they played against Connacht, this could be a 1-score game and a proper battle. But again, the Lions in Ireland, it's hard to know. If the conditions are anything like it is this weekend, they will struggle because it's very similar to what it is in Parma.
Okay, let's quickly run through the other Irish fixtures then. Sharks Munster.
It kills me to say it, but I think Sharks by 12, to be honest. How do Munster fix a failed lineout in a week without Peter O'Mahony, for instance? I don't know if they can. So I think Sharks will win that by 12, maybe even more. I think the aim for Munster here is to get 2 points out of it.
Right. Ulster Cardiff could be an interesting game.
Yeah, Cardiff have a good record at home against Irish provinces. They have a good record at home in general, but especially against Irish provinces. I expect Ulster to bounce up with more confidence again. They'll get the likes of Timney back, hopefully Henderson back, hopefully Rob Herring back. The whole of Ireland is hoping he gets back at this stage because we have no fit hookers, pardon the pun. So we'll wait and see how that goes. I'll back Ulster to win by, again, maybe 10 points, give or take. I don't think they'll pull massively away because Cardiff have an ability to make it into a bit of a fight and they will want to bounce back from the second half kind of. No, I'm not going to call it implosion, but a poor second half against Edinburgh. So I think they'll make that a battle, but Ulster, it looks like the only way is up for them.
Okay. And then finally, Connacht Dragons. Dragons have been frustrating this year because they keep kind of...
Two frustrating teams. Like one, the Dragons for not making good on their chance and Connacht for not tidying up their defence at all. They've conceded a try bonus point in like 4 of their first 5 games, I'm pretty sure, so far this season. Like that's that's a coach killer. Like that's the guy. Now, Connacht coaches do not have a massive amount of hair on their head. If they did, they'd probably tear them out. Respect for the ball community, of course. But I think Connacht should pull away here. It's a potential banana skin, absolutely. But again, it's the Dragons traveling to Ireland. How much focus will they put in on that one? I'm not sure if they put in too much. I think Connacht will win with a bonus point, maybe by 15, 17 points.
And a lot of the Dragons' improvement has come from defence up front with people like Basham, Lewis Hughes, who come from Carl. You know, Keddy is playing out of his skin at the minute, and it's kind of building forward from there. So if those are lost to, you know, sitting out and keeping quiet for the Wales squad, then yeah, Dragons may struggle. But Dragons are going to give someone a bloody nose at some point. They're going to do it, and it all just makes it really, really good. So cool. Okay, so that's all of last week and next week sorted. Caelan's, so just to let everyone know where we are with this. So I said to Caelan, let's do a little bit of a chat on last week's, and then pause for a couple of seconds, and then we'll do what's coming next week. Then you can pick your game of the week next week. And because he's Caelan, he just went right the way through like a steam train. So Caelan has done his game of the week for next week, which is Leinster Lions, Alan. Which, you know, let's just start with your view on that 1 versus 2. If the Lions are going to make a statement this year about how good they are and how good they could be, this is the game to do it in.
Definitely.
What are you hoping for this weekend?
I'm hoping for a couple of bonus points. I'd like to get within 7 and score the 4 tries. Realistically, if we can get away with 1 bonus point, I think that would be a good takeaway. But obviously, I'm hoping for the win. I think that would be like the result of the URC for us up to this point. So you have to try, don't you? You can't go over there and not give it 100%. I think we've got the pack to compete with them. I think we've got the kicking game to compete with them. We have a couple of Springboks in our back line now. So I'd love for us to win that game, and I'm genuinely hoping that we do. I think our scrum success up until now, along with Edinburgh, is at 100%. So it just comes down to whether our lineouts can, phase play and stick to our structures and that kind of thing, with the odd flash of exciting backline play. But then again, is it going to be raining? Do we know what the weather's going to be? Because like I said, we're not the biggest fans of that, the rain. So it makes it, but obviously hoping for the win. I'm really excited for the game. Definitely going to be the game of the week, I think, for myself.
I think it's game of the week. Yeah, I think it's game of the week overall. I think, yeah.
But I've got some bad news for you. You're playing in Ireland and hoping for it not to rain.
Yeah, no.
You know, it's
at the end of October. Yeah, after a storm has just rushed through, the whole west of the country.
Yeah.
But if you're you're champion, if you're gonna win games and you're gonna make a genuine statement, like you said, these are the games you have to at least compete in. You don't necessarily have to win it now, but you need to compete. And if we can get away with 2 bonus points or a bonus point, I think that's let's even say hold Leinster to 4 points. Why don't we try that?
I was going to say, I think that's the point I think to start from, because they've had 5 out of 5, haven't they, in terms of bonus point wins. So just knocking off their 100% record would be nice.
Yeah, somebody's going to give them a bloody nose at some point. Okay, Ben, you've not got a choice this week on home games, because only one of your teams is playing at home this week, which is Benetton, and they're playing against the Bulls, which is probably the worst time to play the Bulls, when they've just lost a game. And as we'll discuss later, their supporters have taken it really well. So
I heard.
Benetton versus Bulls, mate. What do you make of it?
Well, Benetton have turned a corner, haven't they? I mean, the first 3 games they were pretty abysmal, and the last 2 games they've won, and they've already beaten a South African team at home, didn't they? I think their first win of the game was it Sharks they beat their first win of the season.
Yeah,
top of my head. It'll be an interesting game. Just to see. I think the Bulls squad is pretty strong. Whether they bring a few of their players back in, Benetton. I think Fekitoa was benched yesterday against Dragons, wasn't he? So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back into the midfield. Because I think Fekitoa and Imaga are kind of the two players that are making the backline tip for Benetton on, usually. With Menoncello and Brax, and then obviously Negri in the back row. So yeah, it'll be an interesting game to watch, I think. I don't really have a particular preference for either side. It's hard to pick a winner at the moment because the Bulls will be licking their wounds, I think, after Friday night, because I think they would have thought their team they put out was strong enough to beat the Scarlets. But again, it's all about how they play after 30 minutes at the moment, because the last two games they've kind of come out flying, and then they just seem to stop playing, and it's really, really odd to see that so far. And the Bulls will want to be going one better than last season, and certainly one better than 3 seasons ago, to be beating finalists two out of the first 3 seasons of their existence in the URC. They're going to want to get to that final. Any win is beneficial for them to have that home pathway, because we know how that benefits the South African teams when they get into knockout games, is that they want to be playing their games at home from quarterfinals as far as the finals. So yeah, I'd expect them to rotate. I think they'll put out a stronger team than they did on Friday and hope for the win. But with Benetton, it's just difficult to know what team's going to turn up for them at the moment, because they've had some shockers and they've had some pretty decent wins since. So yeah, it's how
if Benetton can make it to half time and still be in the game, they're in with a shout.
They'll win. They'll probably win. Yeah, I think. The Bulls have really got to manage the second half of their games a lot better than they have the last 2 or 3 weeks. So.
Can you imagine the uproar if the Bulls lose to an Italian side? I mean, there'll be whole mountains that will be picked up and thrown in the sea. They'll be
on the high valley. They'll be happy with it. Yeah.
Okay. So, give me your score prediction then on Benetton and Bulls.
I think there's going to be high scoring. I think I'm going to go Bulls 30-20. Bulls 30, Benetton 20.
Okay, so Bulls by 10. Okay, cool. Right, so Alan, you've gone for Stormers against Glasgow, which it's on, again, just to make sure everybody knows, it's on like ridiculously early. It's like 1 o'clock or 1:15 on Saturday, which I quite like. I quite like that kickoff. It's not great to go and watch it, but it is quite a nice time to kick off. So, are you thinking that this might be an upset, or
it's
not?
A tough one, isn't it? Because Glasgow showed something on the last game they played, so they can definitely win. It's whether the Stormers can keep up, the game plan that they had last week or this week. It's a really tough one to call. I think the Stormers have an element of chaos about their rugby at the moment, these offloads and the passing and the stepping and creativity. And Glasgow have got a lot more structure to their game, but I think they've got the pack and they've got the game plan to counter the Stormers. But it is a tough one. They're not playing at Cape Town Stadium.
They're playing in Stellenbosch, aren't they?
Yeah, they're playing in Stellenbosch.
I was just about to say, that's going to change it, I think.
Yeah, that changes it quite a bit. I think the fans will definitely fill out the stadium. They're going to be excited for that. And it's a lovely place to play rugby.
I was saying, is that where they played the Scarlets last year?
I think
they'll play 2 of their 9 home games in Stellenbosch, a bit like what Munster do when they play at Musgrave in Cork. They'll play 2 of their home games, to 2 or 3 out of their 9.
Because every now and again, the camera pans out. Like if there's a break in play, the camera pans out, and you just think, like, boys, why are you playing rugby? Just sit there and look at the view, because this is amazing. It looks
it's
like
a proper university town as well, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, Stellenbosch has got a very,
yeah.
very big history and Springbok players and that kind of thing. But it's a good thing of the Stormers to do that. I wish the Lions would. I wish the Lions would go and play a couple of their games elsewhere, get the fan base up.
Where would you suggest going to play?
There's a couple of places near a Centurion, which would be by the cricket stadium. There's rugby fields around there, which are a bit safer to get to. But the Lions, these teams all own their stadium, so they're not going to give away on, the actual.
It would be nice because half the teams do move, because obviously Ospreys have gone between Swansea and Bridgend, and they're playing Edinburgh and Bridgend, I think, on Saturday, actually.
You'd get a lot more fans attending the game if they did that.
Yeah.
But in this game itself, I think both teams can win it. I'm going to give it to the Stormers by about 5 points. So let's say something along the lines of 25-20.
Really close. That's bold. I think that's bold.
There'll be a whole load of very angry Scotsmen right now, just kind of going, right, where is he? I'm coming for him.
But the Glasgow can definitely win it, though. So, I mean, and they've got a South African
No,
coach.
no. You just said
no, the Stormers. I'll give it to the Stormers. I think the Stormers will win, but it'll be a narrow game, and I think Glasgow will get away with a bonus point. So there you go.
I think the Glasgow win depends on whether Hugh Jones starts or not, because obviously he didn't play yesterday. It's whether he's playing next weekend, because I think he has that sort of additional kind of piece, his players, that additional part, their backline that I think was missing yesterday with McDowell in there instead of him. And McDowell and Tubelock, I think, are a little bit too similar. Jones has got that flair at 13, and I think obviously we were talking about it last week, but he's really kicked on. His consistency's been absolutely incredible since he went back to Glasgow after having a bit like Adam Hastings at Gloucester, not really kicking on at Harlequins. He kind of went there and stagnated and plateaued. So since he's come back into Glasgow colours, he's certainly kicked on again, and he's kind of made that 13 shirt his own. So be interested to see if he starts next week, because with him there, I'm more confident about Glasgow, and if he's not there, I think Stormers might edge it. But I think he's the key to Glasgow's backline.
Okay. So Welsh games this weekend. I'm rather blessed because I've got Scarlet Zebra on Friday. I've got Ospreys Edinburgh at 3:00 on Saturday, and then I've got Cardiff Ulster at 7:30 on Saturday. But I'm going to go with Ospreys Edinburgh as my game of the week for a couple of reasons. First of all, I haven't had a chance to pick Ospreys as the game of the week so far. But second of all, I think that we're due a response from the Ospreys. I think that you get to that bit where the pressure starts to come on. And Edinburgh would have had this already been where it just with the chatter starts. Do you know what I mean? Mm. It's like, oh, what's wrong? And it started in the Welsh media, and the Welsh media can be absolutely brutal for such a small place. And everybody knows all of the reporters and all that kind of stuff, and they'll sit there and they'll have a coffee, and then they'll go, oh yeah, lovely jubbly, and then they'll walk away and write something really horrible about the people that they just had a coffee with. I just think the Ospreys are due a response, and I'm still not sure that the Edinburgh recovery is fully underway. I think they need a couple of, bit like the Scarlets have put 2 wins together. Edinburgh need to put a run of wins together to really convince people that this is going in the right direction.
Yeah, Ospreys,
Ospreys are in this really strange place that that next season's coach is already there. He's your attack coach for this season, so you're kind of playing for next season's coach already. They've all got a really strong connection to Toby Booth, so there's an emotional connection to the current coach. So the desire is there, the players are there, and at some point that has to come together, and they have to turn it into a result. And I think, unfortunately for Edinburgh, I think this will be one of those games. I think it won't matter to the Ospreys if it's entertaining rugby. I wouldn't want to be stood on the wing for the Ospreys this Saturday. I'll be honest. I think the wings are just going to get a little bit bored, and just seeing all the forwards having a little cuddle with the ball in the middle there. It's not going to be a wild, exciting game from the Ospreys, but I think it'll be a win for them, and I think that'll be enough to kind of satisfy a lot of the chatter that's going on at the minute. So I'm going Ospreys to win by 8 points, Edinburgh to come away with nothing, Ben, and then that puts all the pressure back onto you after that, and you can sit there and stew about do we keep our coach and all that kind of stuff, and the Ospreys will go, right, yes, but we've had a win. So yeah, that's where I'm calling it. I'm calling the Ospreys by 8 for that one. So lovely. Right, we're quickly going to rattle through the others and just pull some scores out. So we've done Benetton Bulls, Scarlet Zebra. I think that's a fairly comfortable Scarlets win. Oh,
Is there
I
such
I
a
think that's
thing?
you need a bonus point win. Bonus point win
Yeah.
is the aim of that game, I think.
I think if we win that game, that's 3 on the bounce. And I think the last time we won 3 games on the bounce was when we won the championship. That's the last time we had 3 games on the bounce that we won.
Led
So
by a Scot as well.
yes, and
Well, Barks.
very handsome he was too.
Yeah.
We've done Stormers, Glasgow, we've done Ospreys, Edinburgh, Sharks, Munster. And this is an interesting game. Sharks, Munster. That wasn't your game of the week, was it? No, Stormers, Glasgow. No. So Sharks, Munster. I mean, both sides really needing a win on this one.
I think Munster could come back from South Africa with nothing. I've got a feeling they're going to come out there with 0 points.
I think it's going to be close. I think the Sharks both these teams aren't quite gelling, are they, at the moment? But I think another week with the Sharks and the Springboks in the team might just align them a little bit better and get them a bit more cohesive. So I think Sharks win pretty close there. I think maybe within like 7 points. But I do think Munster need a win. I do think Caelan will be hoping and praying for a win. But I just think that where the Sharks are getting all the Springboks back in another week of training, I would say the Sharks within 7 points.
When you look at the fixtures, you go, "Well, that's a good game. That's a really good game." Yeah, well, it's a shame. We'll discuss there's some of the drawbacks with Premier Sports in a minute, but it's a shame you can't watch more than one game at a time. Leinster Lions, we've done Cardiff Ulster. Again, this is a mid-table clash that could go either way. Ulster started to find a bit of form. Cardiff showed a lot of promise at the start of the season, kind of gone a little bit wobbly, but they're at home. They play much better at home. That could go either way, and nobody would be surprised who wins that. Do you know what I mean? So I'm gonna say a home win because they're at home for Cardiff on that. But feel free to disagree with me on that one, James.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
I disagree with you as well. I think Ulster are going to win. I think Ulster are going to win quite comfortably. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win by at least 10.
I agree.
But we're allowed to disagree agreeably, and that's
we're allowed to. It's perfectly acceptable for grown adult men to disagree about things and then laugh about it. That's perfectly normal. We'll discuss supporters in a minute. So last game then is Connaught Dragons away in Connaught. As much as I'd love to call that for the Dragons, I don't think I can. It's, I guess, a tough call going out to Connaught. Nobody likes playing there. I can't see Dragons pulling it out of the bag. I really would love to see Dragons pull it together and start to move forward because they deserve it. I just can't see them doing it in that game, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
I'll go maybe Connaught by 5, maybe a bit more, but I think Dragons will start to pick up, losing bonus points, and that might be enough to give them something to go forward with. Okay, lovely jubbly. So that's all the games rounded up and all the pretty bits discussed and all of that kind of stuff. So before we move on with a few other bits and bobs, I'm just going to hear from Caelan as well. Because a little chat with Caelan at the end, after we did predictions and all of that, did a quick chat about supporters' reactions after the game. So let's just quickly shoot back to Caelan. Supporters' reactions. So you will have seen this, okay, from the Munster point of view. So you're two games won, 2 out of 5, blah 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 blah, and all hell's breaking loose. So Scarlet's also 2 out of 5, well 2.5 out of 5. The amount of South African fans that automatically think that the Bulls, if the scrum goes down, that means the Bulls gain a penalty, and that's how it works. Given that how many times we talk about how competitive this league is now, what would you be saying now to supporters from from everywhere up just about keeping a level head on this? Because there are a couple, and they're Welsh and Scottish and Italian. The Italian ones are funnier because you
And
get
Irish. Let's not forget our
yeah,
own
yeah, I'm
comment
getting there as
section.
well. I'm getting there as well. But the Italian ones are funnier because I can't understand what they're saying, but I absolutely get what they said because of the amount of capital letters, the amount of bold, and the amount of emojis after it, that you can just tell that there's something they're not happy. So, yeah, what are you making of supporters' reactions at the minute?
Look, we've talked about officiating and whether or not officiating is of the standard that we'd like it to be. I would have graver concerns about the World Rugby directives from the top down. And I understand that that will cause frustrations. You are very much one that will say, look, we got one this week. We'll probably get one against us next week. That's how it always happens in sport. And that's generally true, bar maybe the top teams get the rub of the green a bit more often than others. It's tough. Don't get me wrong. Like I was seething yesterday. Like it is tough, and especially in this digital age where we're always conversing and talking and interacting and getting baited into conversations as well. It is important to keep a level head. There's a lot of rugby left to be played this season, and hopefully it does all balance out because I think last season the one thing that we could say compared to even the season before was, yeah, can't argue with the finishing spot of any team there. That was one of my main takeaways last year was, yeah, I think I can agree with most if not all of those. So hopefully it does balance out. And sure, look, if even if it doesn't, if you're a South African fan or an Irish fan or maybe not as much a Welsh fan, but you got November coming up and it should be all positive and we should be all happy because we back our teams in those games. So let's just take the stress off the URC and leave it for the internationals and hopefully that'll fix everything because it usually does.
Yeah, I think unless you're Welsh. Yeah, I mean the thing for me is we're in round 6, and you do get to a point where you just enjoy the rugby, you know, just enjoy the game. It's not life and death. It's there are bigger things going on in the world right now, and rugby is your release from it. So don't go taking your stress out on the rugby. It's as frustrating as it is. And last season, yeah, I was one of those people who would have been everything's go. The world is against us. The world is absolutely against us, and everybody hates us and all that kind of stuff. And you get to the end of the season, you go, "Oh, well, we do it again now. We start again next season." So it is what it is. And a very good friend of mine once said to me that it's just a bunch of grown men running around in small shorts trying to dive on the grass with a big white thing. And you go, oh, probably true. That's what it is. Anyway, my friend, you can go work now. You can go do stuff. You can go go enjoy
Yay.
life.
All
um,
leisurely.
Yeah, Caitlin, thank you very much for your time today, mate. Gutted you can't be on the pod tonight because it's always the better for you, but we will be back next week fully ready to go and all of that kind of thing. So I shall catch up with you then, my friend. All the best.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Okay, so let's discuss. I mean, this has been ongoing for a while. Referees and the game and all of this kind of stuff. We're not going to discuss referees. We're not going to discuss individual decisions. We're going to discuss supporters' reactions to it. And I've got to say, some of the supporters' reactions are a bit lopsided, shall we say? I've been a referee in the past. I gave up because of supporter abuse. That's why I gave up. Why the hell am I doing this? It makes no sense. I've had enough, and I walked away. And I'm surprised more people don't. So you can only call what you can see, and sometimes you can only call it there, and sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes they've got a different view to the TV camera, and then that's where the TMO comes in. And so as grown adults, we just have to accept that they've seen something we haven't, and maybe they've got it wrong. maybe they've got it right and we've got it wrong. Perish the thought. There are some times where supporters get it wrong. Well, that happens. So, what's your guys' take on current reactions to referee decisions?
Okay, as a South African, and I'm speaking to specifically certain, it's difficult for us as fans to agree with every single decision, and we never will. The issue that I have with it is that with the advent of social media, everyone's opinion needs to be heard, and unfortunately, it becomes almost like a snowballing effect at times.
Mm.
What we need to bear in mind is that if you're going into a game and you're hoping for penalties and you're hoping for things to go your way at certain elements of the game, that's the wrong way to go into any game. The best thing you can do is control the controllables. So, for example, if you are going into a game expecting to get scrum penalties and they don't go your way, to start getting worked up and frustrated by it doesn't help anybody. What you can control, things like knock-ons, your line-outs, that kind of thing is what you need to work on. Rusty has said it in the past. I think even he in the past has acknowledged he's made certain mistakes when it comes to assessing referees. But we all love this game, and the referees are human and they have a team with them. And it doesn't help that World Rugby introduces the amount of laws and changes that they do. It makes it really difficult to interpret for them as well. So as fans, we should make the effort to just be respectful of each other's teams, first of all, to a degree, because we are watching Welsh teams here and Italian teams and Scottish teams and Irish teams. And we are cousins now, so we need to get along. And the referees that we have, it's foolish to assume that every South African referee is perfect. They're not, and we need to be respectful of that and mindful. So let's all be a bit more tolerant of each other's views and a bit more tolerant of the referees, and let's help encourage our teams to work on what they can work on.
So, Ben, you were talking about maybe becoming a ref at some point. Is that still?
It is, and I think we have to try and push back against this sort of online march to hatred and being offended by everything. No one has the right to not be offended. There are going to be some decisions made in your life that aren't going to go your way, and it doesn't matter whether it's at work, whether it's your personal life, whether it's in sport, and you have to learn how to accept that, because that's how you show sort of maturity and humility, and it's really important. I think some people, and I do see it, and it's a reason why I try not to be on social media as much as I used to be, is that what used to be solely online behavior is now creeping into real life, and I think people don't understand that what you say online is you could be equally as responsible and culpable for it. And there is legislation out there to kind of prevent sort of some of the hatred that's coming, and it's difficult because society has never been more polarized than it has right now. And I think we could point to various political events since probably 2010, 2012, post-economic crash, where people have become very entrenched, and they kind of retire to their echo chambers and be surrounded by people that agree with them, without understanding that there are other views out there that are, if not equally compatible, sometimes more valuable towards kind of the goals you're trying to achieve. So I think there's the danger there that if you surround people in that kind of groupthink mentality, then you become more divisive, more unwilling to kind of disagree agreeably, like the three of us do and the four of us do, and Kaylin's with us. That's how people should behave.
Well, less so in Kaylin's, yeah.
Less so. But at least we're laughing about it. But you'll see some people that will almost want to be upset at the moment. They always want to be outraged. It's like, oh, I must be angry about something that doesn't really affect me. And you're exactly right, Alan. Like, you can't control everything, and you can't get too upset by something that's outside of your control. We are spectators watching a sport we love, and to want to be annoyed or outraged by a referee interpreting the rules, and they're laws, not rules. So there's a greater level of discretion there than there is with maybe other sports. That if they've interpreted, like, you think of certain refs will interpret a jackal different to the others. Some will, but Ben Whitehouse in particular, he pings almost immediately if someone's jackaled the ball. He'll give it maybe a second or two, whereas others will want to see a bit more of a lift. But it's interpretation, and I think we've got to agree that that's okay. And it does mean that rugby games will play differently, and depending on which ref it is, the game may sort of unfold slightly differently. But that's okay, and I think we should all be for that. And I think we don't want refs to be robots. I like the communication that goes on with refs and players. I think some players have crossed the line. It's Jamie Ritchie restricted the Scotland captaincy. It wasn't just for the communication with refs. It was to do with him not being first choice in the back row. But there were you've seen some players kind of creep into that sort of back chat. We saw it with Ross Byrne when he was carded against Edinburgh. We've seen it with some other players, and I think the sooner the players set a better example, then that's one way of dealing with it. But I think it's just, unfortunately, it's how do we get fans and spectators, whether they're at the pitch or commenting online, to just act a bit more responsibly and understand that decisions are made in a split second. And we can go back through the replays as much as we like, but I don't want refs to have to think like that. I don't want them to be second guessing themselves, because then they don't make decisions. And the worst decision is sometimes not making a decision. You've got to just go, right, this is what I've seen, this is my decision. And if it's something that's not been seen and the TMO pops in, that's their safeguard. So I think we have a good system, and I don't think it needs to change.
Yeah, I think as well is that sport's obviously very, very emotive. And the problem you have, we're very passionate about the sport, but we need to bear in mind that trying to apply logic
about the right things.
Trying to apply logic and reason, even as fans, is difficult enough. And then as a referee in the midst of the heat, of the game, is difficult. But let's just remember, respect, colours, creeds, teams, respect for authority. That's the most important thing. That's what we supposedly represent as rugby fans. So let's do that. Let's respect each other.
See, now that's the message I should finish the pod on. But I did say we'd talk about
Premier Sports.
Premier Sports. There's been a lot of issues with Premier Sports this year. A lot of issues. And I've got no doubts that they're working really hard to try and sort it. But you can't sign up on the account. Let's start with the basics. On their website, the website is crap. You can't sign up for it. You can't work out what you need to do, where you need to go to sign up for it. You can't work out where to put a bloody discount code in. Half the discount codes don't work. The screens don't work.
You can't manage your account.
No. So, I mean,
what frustrates me most is Premier Sports obviously had the deal for 3-4 seasons before Viaplay came in. Viaplay had an app on all TVs which was easy to open. It was the same with the phone app as well. You could cast from your phone very easily. Premier Sports obviously take the deal back, and they promised a lot when they took the deal back off Viaplay in April, and they haven't delivered on most of that so far. It's just really, really, it just feels amateurish again. And Friday night Scarlet's Balls kind of was the epitome of that.
Ridiculous.
And the Lions game. The Lions game, which was the Lions game, the one that lost volume, or was it the Bulls game? It was the Bulls game, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the game that lost the volume.
Scarlet's Balls on Friday. Yeah, the volume kept going. And they said it was local.
But S4C broadcast from there pretty much every week and have no issues at all. BBC broadcast from there regularly, have no issues at all. It's not it's not the end of the world. Do you know what I mean? It's got all mod cons. So why it wasn't bad weather, it wasn't there was a little bit of rain, but there was no reason for it to lose picture, to lose sound. I think it lost sound like 4 times.
4 or 5 times in the first time.
But even build up for some of the games, and it seems to be the South African games. I know the time's not ideal. Sometimes you got the Premier Sports cut in, and it just goes to players running onto the field.
Yeah,
if this happens with the Champions Cup, we already know that's in and they have the rights to that now. Can you imagine what happens when the French and the English get a hold of and they start seeing the standard rolled up across the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup?
That was going to be my point next. Was my worry is how those first 2 rounds, sort of early December, go when you've got the French teams playing at home. Like, what are they going to provide pre-match? Because, like you say, yesterday they went straight to. Obviously, they were all at the Hive, in Edinburgh. The 4 of them,
but that's fine. They do it in Sky with the. And I know they don't have the Sky.
They're just getting a feed from SuperSport, aren't they?
You're just getting a bit of a chat. I mean, I know that the South African guys it's Skalkberger and those guys. Surely, just a little bit of build up or a little bit of a chat. It's a partnership. So, and then you got the game with the Stormers where you have to show the stadium scorecard because you don't have a score thing on the screen. So you got to keep cutting to the stadium scores and stuff, and they make apologies for that. So
I think what we're saying is that this is now one of the biggest TV audiences for rugby in the world. There aren't many other leagues that come close to the numbers that we're talking about, and it continues to grow, and it's getting more and more competitive. English sides want to be a part of it. Premier Sports have got to sort themselves out on this. It requires investment, and it requires investment that should have happened. Well, it should have happened over the summer before the start of this season.
They've had time. They knew they were getting it back from Viaplay back in January from memory, and then obviously Viaplay ran it down over the 3.5 months. And they've had, we're now nearly in November. They've had time, and it's not like they're new to the market. They had it for 3 or 4 seasons before, so there's no real excuses here. But I feel like the app hasn't changed while they were away for the year and a half and Viaplay had it. So I don't know what's gone wrong. They've had time to fix it, and they just haven't seemed to be able to do it. And I'm worried about the Heineken Cup Challenge Cup coverage. I'm not. Yeah, that's going to be the litmus test, I think, for their ability to carry 3 competitions this season, which is the first time they've done it.
So I guess our message to Premier Sport is that, as we love rugby. Ideally, we'd like to have all of the rugby in one channel, and if it's them, great, fantastic. But they've got to up the game significantly if that's going to happen. I hope that it does. I'd love to have all my rugby in one place and just go, right, this is where we go for rugby. And millions more people would be more interested in that way. And you only have to look at, our figures and look at how many people we get from Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, China for some reason. Don't know why. But, Japan, people tune into our podcast from all over the world. We've not even got, we just got our mugs to look at for an hour. Imagine if there was actual sport going on, how many people would you get? So this is a worldwide sport. We're about to explode in the United States. And when that happens, then, all hell breaks loose. So come on, sort yourselves out. We'll support you. We'll keep banging the drum for the URC. But please, 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 can you sort yourselves out? Because, oh my God, it's frustrating. I feel better now, gents. I feel that we've got some stuff off our chest. Gents, it has been an absolute pleasure again. Thank you very much for giving up your time and spending it with me on a Sunday evening where you could have been watching Strictly, Sorry about that. But Caelan will be back with us next week, gents, and we will do this all over again. And until then, enjoy your rugby. All the best.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Cheers.
That was the United Rugby Rewind. Please rate, review and share us on socials if you can. And join us next week for more of the same. And until then, enjoy your rugby.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.